when Jesus was about to be handed over, Pontius Pilate, he came and he had a little conversation with him. He said, now, you know the allegations they throwing against you, right? You know what these people who trying to come and get you and take you to be crucified, you know what they saying about you, right? You know that. I just want to get an understanding with you, Jesus, because you know I'm in a position where I could turn you over, but I just want to holler at you real quick and get an understanding, because you know these people they talking about, they saying you doing all this stuff. I know you a righteous man, but this what they saying. You ain't gonna defend yourself? Defend yourself for what? That's the position that Jesus is in. Jesus is like, defend myself for what? You think I need to defend myself, but that's because you don't understand the mission. You don't really understand why I'm here. And so because Jesus understand what the mission was, he kept his perspective. I could explain myself. I could tell you that they wrong. I could tell you to let me go and not to turn me over to them, but then I wouldn't be able to do what it is that I was sent here to do. So because what I'm sent here to do calls for me to stay in this position, I don't need to say nothing. And sometimes you have to get to a position. Well, when you are in the middle of dealing with your loss, you don't say a word. I don't need to talk because I have an understanding that what God has called me to puts me in a position where sometimes I have to deal with rejection. Well, sometimes I have to deal with hatred. Or sometimes I got to deal with people lying on me. But that's all fine and dandy because I walk with God. I talk with God. And whatever it is that he is calling me to do, I'm cool with dealing with whatever comes with it, because at the end of the day, if he put it in the midst of my situation, if he put it on the path to my purpose, then it must mean that this is all a part of the plan, and it does not stop me from getting to what I still need to get to be where he has called me to be. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode on Fourth Quarter Pressure, where you are always the more and never the lesser. I am your host, CJ Stokely, and as always, it's been a little bit of time that has passed by since we've last sat down to do this, but we are back, officially back. And so as I always was then, so I am now, grateful, elated, and thankful for this opportunity to sit down with you and lock back in. So like I said, it's been 4 weeks. It's been 4 weeks, and actually, if I'm counting correctly, it may have been longer than that. I think it's been 5 weeks since we've sat down and done this, or either this is week 5. I can't really remember, but had to get some things changed up, moved around. So one of the things that are going to be different going forward is we are going to be meeting on today, every Thursday at 6 p.m., okay? Because I want to catch you right after Wednesday. You know, Wednesday's hump day. It's that midweek. This thing's been going on early in the week. You've been going to work. You've been dealing with whatever you've been dealing with. And then, you know, you get to that midweek point, and then you're excited about the weekend coming up, and you may have plans to go do whatever you're going to do. But I want to catch you right before you end up making the decision to go out on the weekend and do some things that may not reflect righteousness, that may not reflect God. So I want to give you some more tools to add into your arsenal as you get ready to go into the weekend and do whatever it is that you're going to do, as well as empower you right after that midweek, that midweek moment, that midweek day that you have. So, all right, here we go. Let's get into it. And before we get ready to start, first off, as I always have to do, I want to give a big shout out to official glorygear.com, the website for the #1 Christian clothing brand in the world. The name of that clothing brand is Glory Gear Apparel. There's also a secondary line that's also a part of Glory Gear Apparel, and it's called Edgy Chick. That's for the ladies. You can go over and check that out. It's all going to be on the website. The website, again, is officialglorygear.com. And like I said, it's the #1 Christian clothing brand in the world. There's every type of piece of apparel that you would need to reflect God the way that you would want to. So I would advise, I would push, I would ask for you all to go over and check it out and see if you see anything that you like. So let's get into this episode. And remember, like I said, we're going to be doing this on Thursdays, not Tuesdays. So I don't want you guys going into next Tuesday and being like, dang, what's going on? I thought the podcast was back, when it's actually coming on a Thursday. So, all right, let's get right into it. So today's episode is entitled The Art of Losing. The art of losing, the art of losing, the art of losing. When you think about loss in general, it's something that we all have gone through. It's something that we all have dealt with. But I want to really touch on being able to understand the mastery of losing, how to position yourself in life where you become a master at dealing with loss, at dealing with quote unquote failures. And we're going to dive into it and dissect all the information that we need to have in order to understand what loss really is and if what we are considering loss in our life is actually loss. So let's get right into it. So first, I want to lock in on this word art. The word art. When you think about art, you think about creativity. You think about a masterpiece. You think about using the skills and the talent and the creative mind that you have to create something beautiful. So I want to look at this definition of it. The definition of art is the expression or application of human creative skills and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty and emotional power. Now, I want to insert a couple of words within this definition. Let's go back, right? It says the application of human creative skills and imagination, typically in a visual form, such as painting or sculptures. And I want to insert or how you deal with losing. Because when you think about art, right? When you think about art, to have art, you need a canvas. And I would like to say that this life that we live is our canvas. Every day we wake up with a new opportunity. We have an opportunity, regardless of what we are dealing with, to paint or to create the art that we desire, the beautiful masterpiece that we desire on this blank canvas. In other words, on this opportunity that we have. If God has given us the grace to allow us to see another day, that's an opportunity. That's a blank canvas. And whatever type of art you want to produce that day, you have the opportunity to do so. So I want to insert the way we deal with losing, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty and emotional power. So now just hold on to that. Now let's go to the definition of losing, right? Because this is the art of losing. So let's look at the definition of losing. Losing means suffering, resulting in or relating to defeat. Now we have all been in a space or a situation or a time where we have dealt with feeling as though we were defeated, where we experienced a form of suffering, where we felt like it was all over, where we were overwhelmed emotionally, where we were done wrong. We had to deal with certain actions or reactions of other people or of things that take place in our day-to-day life. So understanding that we've all been through that, I want to look at what happens when we put these two words together. So when we look at art and losing and we talk about the art of losing, the definition of that would be a product of beauty reflecting your emotional power, derived from your ability to access your inner ability to view your situation, your suffering, that things that make you feel defeated as more than simply what it feels like. So when you talk about the art of losing, it is you being able to tap into your inner ability, your spirituality, being able to have mental compartmentalization, to have mental discipline, emotional discipline, and use that and apply it to your current situation that you're dealing with in your life in order for your actions and the fruit that comes out of you, because your fruit should be your actions. When you do what you do, it should be able to be seen as the fruit of the Holy Spirit in each and every action that you display. So yet in the midst of whatever it is that you are going through, what has to come out of you should still reflect righteousness. And if it reflects righteousness, then those are considered the fruits of the Spirit. So now your fruits of the Spirit will allow for the art that you display to be something beautiful, to be something that when people look at it, it is an inspiration, right? So now, how are you able to do this while yet going through whatever it is that you're going through? You must have perspective, because without perspective, losing will destroy you. If you do not have a proper perspective on what it is that you're dealing with, then you can guarantee that you will be consumed by whatever it is that you are dealing with. Because you have to remember, we are merely human beings. There is only so much that we are able to handle in our flesh. What gives us the power to have the right type of perspective? It has to come by way of the Spirit. Because if God did not give us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Now, when you have a sound mind, that means you are operating out of righteous wisdom. That means you are tapped into the spirit realm where you are able to obtain the knowledge that comes by way of what the Spirit of God is saying to you. So now when you look at your situation and how it is going, you are able to step back and say, I can look at this not through my carnal eyes, but I can look at this through how God may be working in the midst of my situation, allowing me to have the proper perspective so that my actions do not reflect my carnal emotions about how I feel in the midst of whatever it is that I'm going through. So we have to understand the power of this perspective. Now, when we look at this a little bit deeper, we go to what is the definition of the word perspective. It is a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something. In other words, what we call it in simplistic terms is a point of view. So what does this mean? Perspective allows for you to focus on the big picture. It doesn't allow for you to get thrown to and fro, to get tossed by the waves of life that come to destroy you and come to drown you. The demonic attacks that are launched against you, you do not get to a position where you become overwhelmed to the point of destruction where Satan convinces you to destroy yourself, because you keep yourself in a position where you have the proper attitude and the proper way of regarding or point of view of how you are seeing what you are going through. So now, how do we know that this is something that we should have? Let's look at Jesus. We don't say that Jesus lost. We don't say he lost when he died on the cross, because the perspective that we take about Jesus only focuses on his mission. We understand that him dying was a part of his mission. So we understand that the loss of his life was just a part of the big picture, being his resurrection and the purpose for which he had to die, being for us to have the opportunity to obtain salvation and have a relationship with God without having to continuously have a sacrifice. So now, since we understand that, then what does that mean for us? That means how we handle losing will even impact how others view us. Because going back to what I just said, our perspective on Jesus is we understand that he died, but we focus on his resurrection. But the mission was the mission the entire time. The plan was the plan the whole time. What he was sent to do never shifted. It never changed. It remained the same. And so because we understand that, we focus on that. We don't focus on all of the things that he had to endure on the way there. We may teach on them, we may talk on them, but that is not the focal point. That is not why we lock in on Jesus and we understand the greatest part about why Jesus was here. So same as in your life, when you operate in a position where you are focused on the mission and the fruits that you produce show other people that you are focused on the mission, then what you become is an inspiration to them and what they are going through in their life, being the motivation that pushes them to then focus on their purpose and their mission. You following what I'm saying? So now let's go into this. Grab a notepad, notebook, whatever you got. Let's lock in. So, number one, how do you know you have mastered the art of losing? How do you know you are now the master? You are Master Roshi. You are San Juan. How do you know that you have mastered it? Because your feelings about your loss don't affect your consistency. How you feel in the midst of your situation, how you feel in the midst of what has happened to you, because of the actions that were taken and the position that it put you in. You do not allow yourself to stop your progressive movement. Let's not be confused. Movement can take place without progress. I could walk in circles and go nowhere. But we are talking about progressive movement. See, consistency is not just movement, it is progressive movement. So I have to ensure, if I want to master the art of losing, that I am constantly being effective. I am constantly in a position where my consistency does not change. Now, where can we look at this in Jesus' life? Jesus kept his perspective, which allowed for him to constantly display the art of losing. Now, where can we find that at? Matthew chapter 26, verse 36 through 46. This is when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, what happened? He was overwhelmed. He was stressed. He knew he was about to be taken. He had Peter, who was supposed to be watching him, right? And while he was in the garden, he was sweating so profusely that it got to the point where blood was coming out of his pores. And now what do we see? We see the anxiety, we see the stress, we see the pressure of his mission. We see the pressure of what he's called to. We see the pressure that comes with him knowing that his purpose is calling him to something that means he has to endure pain. He has to endure hardship. And yet, because he was focused on his mission, what do we see? His perspective was, not my will, your will be done. God, take this bitter cup from me, but it ain't about me. Not my will, your will be done. He was focused on the mission. His perspective was in the right place. Where else do we see it? Matthew chapter 26, verse 47 through 56. Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss. And the soldiers who Judas betrayed him for took him, but yet and still, Jesus still embraced Judas. Jesus knew why Judas showed up. Jesus knew why Judas kissed him on the face, because it was a signal to show the soldiers that this is the man that you need to take. This is the man that is my rabbi. This is the man called Jesus. And Jesus knew the whole time. And yet and still, Jesus operated in a position of love where he allowed for Judas to come close enough to him to kiss him. He embraced him and still let Judas do what he had to do. Why? Because he was focused on his mission. Yet in the midst of loss, this is Judas. This is one of his disciples. This is somebody who was with him every day. This is somebody who he helped, who he taught, who he led. Can you imagine someone in your life who you have poured into, who you have shared intimate time with? They are betraying you. You now are experiencing the emotion of the loss, and yet and still, regardless of feeling that loss, regardless of the emotions that come with the fact that they betrayed you, you keep yourself in a position and to still do what it is that you are called to do, because you are locked in on what the mission is that you are called to. So you allow for them to play whatever role they need to play, even at the expense of your own loss, because it is part of the mission, because your perspective is rooted in the understanding of what God intends for you to be doing and what God has called you to and what God has purposed you to do. Let's keep going. How else do we know this? Matthew chapter 11, verse 17 through 26. Jesus gets handed over to be crucified by Pontius Pilate. Now, mind you, when Jesus was about to be handed over, Pontius Pilate, he came and he had a little conversation with him. He said, now, you know the allegations they throwing against you, right? You know what these people who trying to come and get you and take you to be crucified, you know what they saying about you, right? You know that. I just want to get an understanding with you, Jesus, because you know I'm in a position where I could turn you over, but I just want to holler at you real quick and get an understanding, because you know these people they talking about, they saying you doing all this stuff. I know you a righteous man, but this what they saying. You ain't going to defend yourself? Defend yourself for what? That's the position that Jesus is in. Jesus is like, defend myself for what? You think I need to defend myself, but that's because you don't understand the mission. You don't really understand why I'm here. And so because Jesus understand what the mission was, he kept his perspective. I could explain myself I could tell you that they wrong. I could tell you to let me go and not to turn me over to them, but then I wouldn't be able to do what it is that I was sent here to do. So because what I'm sent here to do calls for me to stay in this position, I don't need to say nothing. And sometimes you have to get to a position. Well, when you are in the middle of dealing with your loss, you don't say a word. I don't need to talk because I have an understanding that what God has called me to puts me in a position where sometimes I have to deal with rejection. Well, sometimes I have to deal with hatred. Or sometimes I got to deal with people lying on me. But that's all fine and dandy because I walk with God. I talk with God. And whatever it is that He is calling me to do, I'm cool with dealing with whatever comes with it because at the end of the day, if He put it in the midst of my situation, if He put it on the path to my purpose, then it must mean that this is all a part of the plan, and it does not stop me from getting to what I still need to get to be where He has called me to be. So my perspective says, oh, this is just all a part of it. So sometimes you just got to learn how to be quiet. Let people say what they're going to say. Let people do what they're going to do. Let people talk how they're going to talk. It don't matter. Because we still know Jesus for rising out of the grave on the third day, regardless of the haters, regardless of the naysayers. It doesn't matter because when God said that it is to be so, when He has destined you for it, when it is the plan that He has put you on, nothing can stop it. So you got to get to a position where you have the perspective that at the end of the day, I don't need to say a word. God's plan is going to speak loud enough. God's purpose is going to speak loud enough. The end of a thing is going to speak loud enough. You following what I'm saying? Let's keep going. How else do we know? John 28 through 30. Jesus died, and His last words were, "It is finished." Now, I want to go back, right? I want to go back for just a second. Because we also have the understanding that when Jesus was, matter of fact, no, I don't even want to go back to that. I don't even want to go back to that. Let's stay where we are. So we see in John that when Jesus, right before He died, He said, it is finished. This is after He has endured everything He has endured just to get to the cross. Now He's up on the cross and He's getting ready to die. Some would look at this, I'm sure, in their time, and the people who were trying to crucify Him felt like they were victorious, which would mean if they are the victors, then that would mean Jesus was the one who lost. So if Jesus was in a position of loss, but yet He never viewed it as loss, and He still was able to say it is finished, then that means that He had the understanding that this was all a part of the plan. I needed this to happen. And then He said, it is finished. It is done. So maybe that means that sometimes in our lives, right when something is putting us in a position where we feel that we are at a complete loss, right when the circumstances say that we lost, we should look at it and say, it is finished. Imagine if your perspective on when you are in some of the hardest positions of your life, you looked at it and said, it is finished. In other words, this is all a part of the plan. In other words, God, I thank you for what you have allowed to take place because it is working out for your plan. If this is where you have me, then it is finished. I'm here. I'm here in the midst of what you have intended for me to be in the midst of. So it is what it is. What if we took that perspective? Instead of having the perspective of feeling like a victim, what if we got into a position where we started saying amen, which means I agree. I agree, God. that in the midst of what feels like loss, in the midst of what may look like loss, I agree with you for allowing me to be in this situation because it's a part of your plan. Sometimes we got to get to a point where we stop trying to determine or dictate what is good, or things have to make sense for us to agree with. Sometimes you got to get to a point where it's just like God is God and what he does doesn't have to make sense to me. It doesn't have to add up. It doesn't have to seem fair. Sometimes God just does what he wants to do because he wants to do it. And you ain't got to understand. He don't got to give you a reason. I think it's very easy for us sometimes to get comfortable with God because we've had a relationship with God long enough that we start expecting the answers or the instruction about what he's doing. But God doesn't have to give the instruction. His instruction doesn't determine your level of obedience. If he ain't telling you what to do, then you stay where you at until he says something, and that's it. Because he still is who he is. Don't take his involvement with you for granted. Don't take the fact that he's typically giving you instruction, he's typically giving you direction, he's typically giving you answers, and take that for granted. Sometimes he has to humble you and remind you that, hey, I'm giving you this instruction. I'm telling you this, that, and the third, but I don't have to do this. You still going to obey me when I'm silent? Are you still going to obey me when I'm not telling you what's next? Are you still going to obey? Like, how will you respond? And I think we have to get to a point where our response is simply, amen. God, I agree. If this is what you say is good, then God, I agree. No problem. Right? Let's keep going. So now, in those examples, we were able to see how Jesus' perspective allowed for him to master the art of losing. He was able to master it. Because again, what is it to master the art of losing? It is to be going through what you're going through, and yet your consistency does not change. Your focus on your mission does not change. Okay? Now, point number 2. Mastering the art of losing keeps you in a position of obedience because your loss isn't loss when you understand it's a part of the process. Now, this is good. Now, this is good, right? Because loss can feel like an end all be all. How many times have we come in contact with situations in our life where as we are going through the loss, as we're going through the rejection, as we're going through the betrayal, as we're going through the letdown, as we are going through being ostracized, being talked about, being lied on, being rejected, whatever it is that you are going through in your life, where in the midst of it, it felt like the end all be all. How am I going to get past this? Maybe this is it for me. And we get to a position where the loss feels like a end of the day type thing. Like this is the end of the day. A lot of times we'll be like, well, at the end of the day, in the midst of loss, it feels like this is the end of the day. But when you master the art of losing, it allows for you to have the perspective that this loss that I am experiencing may not actually be lost because I understand that this is just a part of the process. Because think about this. Jesus did not view him having to lose his life as loss because it was all a part of the process. So maybe the reason for why we feel as though loss is because it's unexpected. Because we do not know what comes tomorrow. So we are met with the stress and the frustration of the immediate reactions to what goes on in our life currently at that moment in time. Are you following what I'm saying? So let's say you wake up tomorrow, and tomorrow you don't know what's going to happen, but you are met with a situation that puts you in a position where you are dealing with the loss. But God knew before you were born that that was something that was going to happen. And it is because we do not have the understanding that we don't know what is to come, or we do not have it on the forefront of our mind to think about the reality that we don't know what's to come, that causes us to be in a position where we respond right in that moment. But if you knew that that was coming, it wouldn't have the emotional effect on you. If you knew that that was coming on that day, that situation, that circumstance was coming on the day that it came, you wouldn't have the response that you had. You wouldn't feel as though you were in a position of loss because you would have expected it last year. You would have expected it last month. You would have expected it last week. So how do we overcome the reality of not knowing, but still, because we don't know, we're not able to expect what is unseen? We have to lean then on our faith. We have to lean then on giving our entire lives and placing it over in the hands of God, saying that regardless of what is to come that I do not know, what I can rest assured in is that you are going to make a way. What I can rest assured in to keep my perspective intact is looking at the reality that there is always going to be suffering no matter what. So if I know that there is suffering, although I don't know when it comes, if I know it rains on the just and the unjust, if I know I am someone who the devil deems to be a threat, then I can already put myself in a position where I expect to go through stuff anyway. It is inevitable that it is going to be hardships. It is inevitable that I am going to go through things that make me feel like I am in a position of loss. So at least I can keep it on the forefront of my mind that this is something I'm going to deal with. So that when it does come, it helps me to be in a position of stability emotionally, stability mentally, so that I can keep on pushing and keep on moving forward and keep the perspective that I should have, saying, yeah, I know this is what comes with it. I didn't know it was coming right now, but this is what comes with being a Christian. This is what comes with being flesh. This is what comes with living this life. This is what comes with following Christ. Because if Jesus had to endure what he had to endure, then I'm for sure going to have to endure something. So it allows for you to keep your perspective and focus on the mission so that you can always be operating in a position where you are mastering the art of losing. Point number 3, mastering the art of losing allows for you to forgive those who participated in your loss. How do we know this? How do we know that when we are mastering the art of losing, that it allows for us to forgive those who participated in the loss? Because when we go over to Luke chapter 23, verse 34, Jesus on the cross said, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know. They don't understand. Now, these is the same people. I don't know about you, but I know me. And see, I could keep it real with myself. I'm going to keep it 100 all the way, 10 times 10 every time. If you put me on a cross, I promise you, I ain't there yet. I ain't got it all together yet. I ain't got it all together yet. You put me on a cross, even if I know this is a part of my mission, I'm still going to struggle to say, Father, forgive him, because I might be saying, Father, if you let me off this cross, if I get off this cross, it's up for everybody involved. But that's the greatest thing about Jesus, is he had the emotional stability and the perspective to be so focused on what he was called to, that even in the midst of experiencing a situation that others would look at and consider it loss, he was able to focus on other people being forgiven. Why? Because Jesus was love. So that means a lot of times when we are in a position of being able to focus on mastering the art of losing, we are able to forgive because we are operating out of a heart of love. Your perspective affects you having a certain kind of heart posture. When you are focused on what it is you are called to, and that sometimes it comes with the burden of what feels like loss, then even when you experience it, those who are involved in it, you will be able to look at with eyes of love. You will be able to look at the way that God looks at you, with a heart of love, with compassion, with saying, God, I am upset, but I know they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand because they may not be spiritually where I am, or the reality that they are carnal, they are human, they are flesh, and they are going to do things that sometimes hurt your feelings. But you can only operate in that heart posture of love, being able to forgive other individuals, when your perspective is in the right place about your positioning in your situation that feels like loss. Let's keep going. How else do we know? Because Jesus restored Peter in Matthew 26:75. We see the scripture that is symbolic of the transition of Peter from denial to remorse, right? After Peter had denied Jesus and then the rooster crowed, we saw that Peter went from denial to immediate remorse, feeling bad because Jesus prior had already told him, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. So when it happened, in Peter's mind, it clicked. Then later we see in John chapter 21:15-17, where Jesus restores him despite his denial and tells him to feed his sheep. So even after rejection, after denial, the mission was still on Jesus' mind. Now watch this. Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? Peter said, yes, I do. He said, do you love me? Peter said, yes, I do. He said, okay, if you love me, feed my sheep. Now, this is after Jesus had already been resurrected, okay? So after Jesus was resurrected, his mind was still focused on the mission because the mission went even further than simply his resurrection. Now the mission is shown to be, okay, Peter, I forgive you. Here is the purpose that I have for you. Here is the plan that I need you to follow. I need you to go feed my sheep. I need you to teach about me. I need you to teach about what I did. I need you to teach righteousness to the people who I'm leading you to teach. So even yet and still, amidst going through what he went through, amidst going through the rejection from Peter, amidst going through Peter denying him, being someone who swore that he loved him so much, he still said, it's all good. I forgive you. There are still great plans for your life. There is still a mission you are called to. So I need you to do this mission. And if I do not instruct you to feed my sheep, if I do not say, I forgive you, if I do not make you feel as though it's okay, then Peter may have never put himself in a position to be doing what he was doing after Jesus ascended into heaven. He may not have been in a position to be teaching and preaching about Jesus Christ if he never felt the reassurance that he was forgiven by Christ. Let's keep going. Last point. How do we get to the point of having the right perspective in order to master the art of losing? And this, more than anything else that we have talked about today, this is going to be the most important thing. And this is my last point. This is going to be the most important. I know today was a little bit long. There is a lot that goes into this, and I really wanted you to get it. This is going to be the most important point. Because without this, none of the other points that we just covered is going to be possible. You're not going to be able to do it. You have to stay close to God. All throughout the scripture, what we see from Jesus before him being crucified was him going and praying. If you go open your Bible, you will find it. If you go research it, you will find it. There are multiple times where Jesus went and he was praying. He was spending a long time with God. I wonder if, because Jesus was still completely human and completely God at the same time, allowing him to experience all the feelings, all of the emotions, all of the thoughts, all of the struggles of being human, I wonder if it was him being in a position of intimacy with God, staying close enough to God, hip to hip with God, locked in with God, talking with God, walking with God. If that was what allowed for him to be in the garden, knowing he's about to be crucified and tortured, which means he's still going to feel it in his human body because he's 100% human, knowing what he's about to go through, still allowed for him to be in a position that said, regardless, not my will, your will be done. So is it possible that the key that unlocks the door, that brings forth the access to mastering the art of losing, is predicated on who gives you the key? Is God not the God that opens doors? Is God not the God with the access to your destiny? So what if on this path to your purpose and the plan that God has for your life, he is the one holding the key, and you cannot have the key to open the door that brings forth the access to mastering your losing, lest you first go and you get the key from God? So my challenge to you is to put yourself in a position where you are constantly hip to hip with God, where you are constantly talking to God, where you are constantly walking with God, so that you will forever be able to have access to mastering the art of losing. Because God will always bring revelation. God will always bring forth direction. But if you are not in a position where you know how to access it, if you don't know how to get the key from him to give you the access, then you will never have the perspective that you need to have. And without the perspective, you cannot master the art of losing. Following what I'm saying? All right. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I pray that it really blessed you. I know it was a little bit long-winded, but there was a lot we had to cover. So I hope that you took nuggets from it, that you took the wisdom, the information, the knowledge, and you're going to apply it to your life. Because remember, mastering the art of losing is all about perspective, how you view your situation, operating in righteousness, having a heart posture of love, which can only come by way of being close enough to God. I can't do none of this lest I be right next to God, hip to hip, walking with him, talking with him, praying, having intimate conversation with him. It's only going to come by your level of intimacy. So as you go forward, day to day, doing whatever it is you do, regardless of what happens in your life, regardless of if you feel that you are being put in a position and your circumstances say loss, your circumstances make you feel as though you lost. Remember, this is all a part of the plan. This isn't loss. This is a part of your story. Because if you knew it was coming, it would not be lost in your eyes. It would just be a bump in the road. Just a bump in the road on the way to where God has called you to be. All right, now we're out of here. Before we go, like I always like to do this, you know how it is. And for those of you who are new and you don't know, you're about to learn. Here we go. You are always the more and never the lesser. And you, and me, we fourth quarter present, dog. God bless you. I see you next time. Hold on. If you would like to make a donation and show some support to the fourth quarter pressure movement, including this podcast, I would ask that you would go over to Cash App at $this is 4QP so that I can continue to deliver a word to you every Tuesday at 6 p.m. If you have a small donation, big donation, it doesn't matter. Anything that you can give will be truly, truly, truly appreciated so that we can keep this thing going, showing up and showing out the way that we do. Because remember, you're always the more, never the lesser. And we are fourth quarter pressure.